He used to look at me like I was his favorite secret, like I was something he couldn't get enough of, until he did. And I don't know what hurts more, the moment he stopped trying, or the moment I realized I'd been playing a game I never agreed to join. If you've ever been someone's almost, someone's convenience, someone's temporary comfort, then stay with me till the end, because this isn't just a story about heartbreak. It's about how I finally learned to stop being a player in someone else's game. So, before we begin, please take a deep breath, hit the like button, subscribe if you feel my words, and stay till the very end, because I promise, this one will stay with you. He came into my life like a storm that didn't ask for permission, and I, foolishly, opened every window. His name was Ethan, the kind of man who didn't walk into rooms. He arrived, charming, effortless, disarming in all the ways that make you forget to guard yourself. He made ordinary things feel like magic. A late-night text, a glance across the street, a simple "you up," that sounded like poetry when it came from him. I was 26, still figuring out who I was, still trying to prove to the world, and to myself, that I could be loved for being soft. He noticed that softness. He called it rare, and I mistook his fascination for depth. The first time he called me his favorite distraction, I laughed. I thought it was flirtation, a game between two people who were learning each other's language. But I didn't realize he meant it. To him, I was something to fill the silence between his real priorities. I was the song he played when he got bored of the noise. Still, I stayed. Because when he was kind, he was everything. When he wanted me, I felt chosen. When he touched me, I forgot what loneliness felt like. He didn't need to promise forever. He just needed to look at me and say, "You make me forget the world." And I would forget it too. I started changing for him. The clothes I wore, the way I laughed, even the music I listened to. I bent myself to fit into his rhythm, because I thought love was about meeting someone where they are. I didn't realize he was never planning to meet me halfway. There were nights he'd disappear. No texts, no calls, just silence. And when he came back, he'd smile and say, "You worry too much." And I'd apologize. Apologize for feeling too much. Apologize for asking to be seen. Apologize for wanting to matter. That's the thing about emotional games. You don't know you're in one until you start losing pieces of yourself. My friends saw it before I did. They'd say, "He's not serious. You know that, right?" But I defended him like love was a courtroom, and I was his lawyer. Because when you're emotionally invested, you start mistaking your pain for proof that it's real. The truth. He liked the power. The way I'd light up when he finally decided to notice me again. The way I'd forgive him before he even apologized. He liked knowing that he could break my heart without losing my loyalty. And I let him. Because I thought loyalty would earn me love. It didn't. It earned me silence. It earned me confusion. It earned me the kind of loneliness that sits right beside you even when you're not alone. One night, I remember it clearly, we were at a small get-together with friends. He was standing across the room, laughing, confident, alive, and there was this girl, leaning just a bit too close, touching his arm in that casual way that isn't really casual. He saw me watching, and he didn't look away. He smiled. That same charming, careless smile that first drew me in, as if to remind me, you knew the rules. I left early that night. He didn't follow. He texted the next morning like nothing happened. "Hey, beautiful. What are you doing today?" And I replied, because I still hadn't learned how to stop playing. But something inside me started to shift. A small voice, quiet but certain, said, "This isn't love. This is survival." I started noticing things differently after that. How he'd only ask about my day when he needed validation. How his affection came in waves, Not because of love, but because of control. How I was always waiting for texts, for plans, for attention, for meaning. Waiting became my routine. And waiting is the most exhausting form of loving someone. One evening, I got ready for a dinner he planned, or said he did. He canceled an hour before, said he was too tired from work. Later that night, I saw him tagged in a friend's story, out at a bar, laughing, alive, with the same people he said he didn't have energy to meet. My hands went cold. Not because I was shocked, but because I wasn't anymore. That was the night I realized I wasn't the woman he loved. I was the woman who loved him enough for both of us. I didn't confront him. Not that night. Instead, I sat by my window, watching the city lights flicker through my tears, and whispered to myself, "You deserve better." It felt foreign, almost wrong to say out loud, but it was the first honest thing I'd said in months. The next morning, he texted again, "Come over." And for the first time, I didn't go. He called. I let it ring. And somewhere between the first and last ring, I realized the silence didn't hurt anymore. It was peace. That day, I stopped playing. But he didn't know that yet. He texted for days, short, lazy messages like breadcrumbs, "Miss you." "Why so distant?" "You okay?" And I answered less and less until my words ran out completely. And when the game ended, he noticed, not because he lost me, but because he lost his favorite power. The thing about men like him, they don't miss you. They miss the way you made them feel about themselves. They miss your attention, your warmth, your forgiveness. They miss the way your heart kept showing up, even when theirs never did. Weeks passed, and for the first time, my world wasn't orbiting around him. I went back to old hobbies, reconnected with friends, slept without checking my phone. It felt light, unfamiliar, but beautiful. Then one evening, he showed up at my door, unannounced, with that same look, the one that once melted me. "Hey," he said, smiling. I was around. Thought I'd stop by, but I wasn't the same woman who used to wait by the window. I wasn't the same girl who mistook attention for affection. I looked at him, really looked, and for the first time, I saw him clearly. Not as the man I loved, but as the man who taught me what not to settle for. He asked, "Did you miss me?" I smiled softly and said, "No." I found me, and in that moment, I watched confusion flicker in his eyes. Because for once, the game wasn't fun anymore. He left that night quietly. No goodbye, no grand gesture. Just silence, the same silence he once used to control me. Only this time, it was mine. And it was enough. Sometimes healing doesn't start with closure, it begins with confusion. When I walked away that day, I didn't feel strong. I felt lost. Because walking away from someone who hurt you doesn't feel like victory. It feels like cutting off a part of yourself that you once believed was sacred. For weeks, I kept replaying everything. His voice, his lies disguised as affection. The way he'd make me feel small, and then pull me close again just to make sure I'd never really leave. That was his game. Push, pull, repeat. He was the storm, and I was the one foolish enough to stand in the rain, hoping he'd stop. The silence after him was loud. Every morning, I'd wake up reaching for my phone, not because I wanted to talk to him, but because I'd grown addicted to the chaos he brought. And when it wasn't there anymore, my world felt too quiet, too still. People talk about healing like it's a sunrise, warm, glowing, gentle. But mine was more like standing in the dark, waiting for light that refused to come. I started journaling, not because I thought it would fix me, but because I needed proof that I was still real. I'd write letters I never sent, letters that began with "you," hurt me, and ended with "but I'm learning to live without you." Every word became a Piece of my broken self slowly finding its way back home. I began to see patterns. How I'd ignored every red flag. How I'd mistaken manipulation for love. How I'd allowed myself to believe that pain meant passion. One night, I found myself scrolling through old photos, his smile, his texts, our pictures. It didn't make me cry this time. Instead, it made me wonder, why had I ever thought this was love? Love shouldn't feel like begging. It shouldn't make you anxious every time your phone buzzes. It shouldn't make you question your worth. That night, I deleted everything. The photos, the messages, the playlists, gone. Not to erase him, but to make space for me. I started going for walks, long ones, with music that made me feel like I was healing even when I wasn't. Sometimes I'd stop and watch strangers, couples, friends, families. I realized the world was moving on, even if I wasn't ready to. But slowly, step by step, I began to catch up. Then one morning, I saw him. I wasn't expecting it. I was at a cafe, sitting by the window with a cup of coffee, and there he was, laughing with someone else. For a second, it stung. My chest tightened, my breath caught, but then it faded because I looked at him, really looked, and I didn't feel anger or longing. I just felt done. Not the kind of done that needs revenge or closure. The kind that comes when you finally understand that some people are meant to teach you lessons, not stay forever. He noticed me. Our eyes met for a moment, and there was this flicker of surprise in his expression, as if he'd seen a ghost he never thought would haunt him again. He smiled, that same charming, hollow smile, but I didn't return it. I just looked away, picked up my coffee, and smiled to myself instead, because for the first time in a long time, the power wasn't his anymore. After that day, I started focusing on rebuilding my life. I threw myself into things I'd abandoned when I was with him. Painting, reading, learning, laughing. I reconnected with friends I'd pushed away. It was strange how many parts of my life he'd quietly taken from me without me even realizing it. One of my friends said something that stuck with me. Sometimes you have to lose someone to find yourself again. And she was right. Because every little thing I did, every meal I cooked, every song I listened to, it felt like reclaiming territory that had once belonged to him. Months passed. The memories softened. The ache became quieter. And I began to see beauty in things again. In sunlight on my window. In late-night drives. In silence that no longer hurt. I started to fall in love again. Not with someone else, but with myself. With the woman I was becoming. The woman who no longer needed his validation to feel seen. The woman who learned that solitude isn't loneliness, it's peace. But then, life being what it is, brought him back into my orbit again. A text. Just one word. Hey, funny, isn't it? How that one small word can drag you back into memories you thought you'd buried for good. I stared at it for a long time. He didn't deserve a response, and yet, the old version of me would have written back instantly. But the woman I was now, she smiled, locked her phone, and went back to her book. That was the moment I knew. The game was finally over, because he was still playing. But I wasn't even on the board anymore. He reached out again a week later, called, left a voicemail saying he missed me, that he realized how good I was, that no one understood him like I did. It should have felt satisfying, right? To finally hear the words I'd begged for once upon a time. But instead, I just felt nothing, because his regret didn't heal me. My growth did. The truth is, people like him don't change. They just circle back to see if you're still weak enough to play. But I'd rewritten my story. I was no longer the girl chasing his approval. I was the woman who stopped playing. I saw him again months later, by chance. He looked tired, like life had finally caught up to him. He tried to start a conversation, but everything about it felt small, like he was reaching for something that no longer existed. I listened, smiled politely, and said the words I once thought I'd never be able to say. I'm happy now, and I hope someday you will be too. The look in his eyes, that flicker of loss, of realization, that was the closest thing to revenge I ever needed. Because the truth is, the best revenge isn't making them pay. It's showing them that you no longer need them. That night, as I drove home, I rolled the windows down and let the wind hit my face. The city lights blurred into streaks of gold, and for the first time, I wasn't thinking about him at all. I was thinking about me. The woman who broke and rebuilt. The woman who cried in silence but came out shining. The woman who learned that being someone's favorite game doesn't make you loved. It makes you used. And I had stopped playing. For good. They say time heals everything. I don't think that's true. Time doesn't heal. It reveals. It shows you who you were, who you became, and who you were always meant to be. After that last encounter with him, something inside me shifted permanently. It wasn't anger. It wasn't even pride. It was peace. A quiet kind of peace that comes when you finally stop waiting for someone to apologize for the pain they caused. I began to live differently after that. Not loudly, not dramatically, just honestly. I stopped performing happiness for the world and started feeling it for myself. I moved into a small apartment, a place that felt like mine. The walls were white, empty at first, but slowly, I filled them with color, paintings, books, little pieces of myself I'd rediscovered. Every morning, sunlight would pour through the window, and I'd make coffee in silence. That silence, once unbearable, became sacred, because it wasn't emptiness anymore. It was freedom. I got a new job, one that challenged me, that made me feel capable again. I met new people, some kind, some distant, some temporary. And with each person, I learned something new about connection, that it doesn't have to be heavy, or hard, or painful. That real love, the healthy kind, feels like breathing, not gasping. One day, a man at work offered to walk me home. He wasn't like him. He didn't rush, didn't push, didn't play games. He listened, really listened. And though I wasn't ready for anything, I found myself smiling, a genuine, effortless smile I hadn't felt in years. That's when I realized healing doesn't mean forgetting what happened. It means being able to open your heart again without fear of the past repeating itself. It means loving yourself enough to walk away the moment someone tries to dim your light. Months passed, and I built a life I didn't have to escape from. I found laughter in small things, a friend's message, a song on the radio, a sunset that seemed to whisper, "You made it." I didn't need his voice anymore. Mine was enough. And yet, the universe, in its strange timing, wasn't done writing our story. One evening, I was invited to speak at a small local event, something about growth, resilience, and starting over. I almost didn't go, but something in me said I should, so I did. The room was warm, dimly lit. People sat in silence as I spoke about heartbreak, about losing yourself in someone else and finding the courage to come back home to who you are. It wasn't rehearsed. It was just real. And as I looked across the crowd, I saw him, sitting in the back, quiet, watching. For a second, my voice faltered, not from fear, not from anger, but from the weight of what that moment meant. He was hearing the story of us, not through bitterness, but through truth. Our truth. After it ended, people came up to me, thanking me, hugging me, telling me my words helped them. And then he approached, older, quieter, humbled. He smiled, a sad kind of smile. "I didn't know," he said softly. I didn't realize how much I hurt you. I looked at him, this man who once made me question everything about myself. And all I could feel was compassion. Not because he deserved it, but because I deserved to let it go. You didn't see me back then, I said gently, and that's okay. I see me now. He nodded, eyes glassy, as if finally understanding what he had lost. Not just me, but the version of himself that could have loved better. He left quietly after that. No drama, no closure speech. Just silence, the kind that marks the end of a chapter you've already finished reading long ago. I walked home that night under a soft drizzle, the kind of rain that doesn't sting. It just cleanses. The city lights shimmered against the wet pavement, and I thought about everything that had happened. The love, the pain, the loss, the rebirth. There was a time I thought he'd broken me. Now, I see he simply cracked me open. And through those cracks, the light found its way in. Sometimes we're so desperate for someone to see our worth, we forget that the only eyes that truly matter are our own. And when I finally saw myself, not as a victim, not as a survivor, but as a woman who rose, that was the day I truly became free. Today, if you ask me about him, I'll tell you, he was my greatest lesson. He taught me that love without respect isn't love. That apologies mean nothing if behavior stays the same. That being someone's favorite game is not a compliment. It's a warning. And I learned how to stop playing now. When I look in the mirror, I see a woman who's not afraid to walk alone because she knows she's never truly alone. She has herself. I found peace not in forgetting what happened, but in forgiving myself for staying too long, for loving too deeply, for hoping he'd change. I don't hate him. I don't love him. He's just someone I once knew in a chapter that shaped me. And maybe that's what growing up really is. Not rewriting your story, but reading it with new eyes. So if you're listening to this and you're still trapped in someone's game, remember this: the moment you stop playing is the moment you start winning, because you are not their entertainment. You are the main character of your own story. And one day, you'll look back, just like I did, and realize the ending was never about losing them. It was always about finding you. She smiled softly, voice fading into quiet warmth. And I did. I found myself, finally.